One morning, you wake up and notice something small that feels immediately wrong. His food is still sitting in the bowl, untouched. You call his name, but the house stays quiet. You check the usual places: the couch, the hallway, the doorway where he normally waits for you. Nothing. And that's when the feeling starts to change. It stops feeling strange and starts feeling frightening. Then you finally find him, hidden under the bed, avoiding your eyes, pulling himself into the darkest corner he can find, and suddenly the questions begin. Did I do something wrong? What's happening to him? Is he afraid? Is he in pain? Does he know something I don't? And then the question that hits hardest of all. Did I do enough? For a long time, people have believed that when dogs are close to death, they simply wander away or become restless and anxious. But that explanation is too simple. The truth is, we still understand far less about our dogs than we like to believe. And this is where the subject becomes deeper than most people expect. Because what happens in the final days of a dog's life is not just sad. From a psychological perspective, it can also be strangely comforting. Your dog does not sit there thinking about death the way humans do. He does not imagine the future the way you do. But he can feel that something important is changing inside him. Something bigger than an ordinary bad day. Something that may mean the world he knows is about to change forever. So, do dogs actually know when they are about to cross the rainbow bridge? The answer is not as simple as yes or no. And to really understand what's happening in that moment, we have to do something uncomfortable. We have to step away from what we feel and look at what science actually says. Because what you're about to hear may change the way you understand your dog's final days completely. In 2021, a philosopher named Susana Monceau from the University of Madrid proposed an idea that quietly shifted how scientists think about animals. She suggested that dogs may have a minimal concept of death, not in the way humans do, not as something they can imagine in the future or fear before it happens, but as something they can sense without fully understanding. And that difference changes everything. Because having a concept of death is not the same as anticipating it. Humans live in the future. We imagine what might happen. We worry about loss before it arrives. Dogs don't. They don't sit there wondering if tomorrow will come. They don't count time. They don't ask what's next. They feel what is happening now, and what they feel is change. Subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. Their body no longer responds the way it used to. Movements feel heavier, walks feel longer. Rest doesn't restore them the same way. Food loses its appeal. Energy fades in ways they can't explain, but they can't escape either. And without words, without complex thoughts, they begin to understand something in the only way they can. Not as an idea, but as a feeling. Something is wrong, and they can feel it getting closer. And once you understand that, something else starts to fall into place. Because what your dog feels isn't just physical, it's chemical, and they can smell it. Dogs don't experience the world the way we do. We rely on sight, on words, on logic. But for a dog, scent is reality. It's information. It's truth. With up to 300 million olfactory receptors, their nose is not just sensitive. It's analytical, constantly scanning, constantly interpreting. Every breath they take is data. There's a long-standing idea that dogs can smell diseases like cancer. And it turns out, that idea is real. In controlled studies, dogs have detected lung cancer in human breath samples with accuracy levels reaching 99%. More recently, research from the Penn Vet Working Dog Center showed they can identify cancer in the saliva of other dogs with around 90% sensitivity. And if they can detect that in others, then logically they can detect it in themselves. Which means something most people never consider. Your dog is not just feeling that something is wrong. He is sensing it, tracking it, interpreting it in real time. From subtle changes in body chemistry to shifts in internal signals we can't even perceive, your dog is constantly reading what's happening inside his own body. Not as a diagnosis, not as a label, but as a pattern that no longer feels normal. And when that pattern starts to change, they know, not in words, not in thoughts, but in the quiet, undeniable language of scent. And once you see what they can feel and what they can sense, their behavior starts to make a different kind of sense. Because when that internal signal becomes strong enough, dogs tend to move in one of two directions. Some begin to withdraw, quietly. They find corners, spaces under the bed, places where the world feels smaller and easier to manage. Others do the opposite. They stay closer than ever, following you from room to room, seeking contact, watching you more closely than usual. Most people see these two reactions and assume they mean different emotions. Distance must be sadness. Closeness must be love. But the reality is more complex and in some ways more powerful. In 1988, Benjamin Hart from the UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine described something that changed how we understand sick animals. He found that behaviors like isolation, reduced appetite, increased sleep, and social withdrawal are not signs of giving up. They are built-in responses, patterns shaped over generations, not emotional collapse but biological focus. The body begins to conserve, the brain reduces unnecessary activity. Everything shifts toward one goal: survival. Hart called it the animal's total effort to overcome. So when your dog pulls away, he isn't abandoning you, and when he clings closer, he isn't just being emotional. Both are responses to the same thing, a body trying in every way it can to hold on. And if that explains the behavior on one level, there's another layer most people never see. Long before dogs lived in our homes, they survived in the wild. And in that world, weakness was dangerous. A sick or aging animal didn't always stay close to the pack. Sometimes it moved away, not because it didn't belong, but because it did. Distance wasn't rejection, it was protection, a quiet instinct to keep predators away, to avoid slowing the group down, to shield the ones that mattered most. And that instinct never fully disappeared. It's still there, beneath everything. That's why, when something feels wrong inside their body, dogs don't always react the same way. Sometimes they come closer, seeking safety. And sometimes they do the opposite. They step away, not out of fear, but out of certainty. A quiet decision you don't even notice at first. And then there are moments that feel almost impossible to explain. A dog who hasn't moved in days suddenly stands up, walks through the house, eats, wags his tail, looks at you like everything is normal again, and for a brief moment, it feels like you got him back. But what you're seeing isn't recovery, it's something else. What many call the last rally, a final release of energy, where the body gathers everything it has left. Not to fight anymore, but to reconnect, to see you, to feel you, one more time. And if that moment we just talked about is the most meaningful, this next part is the hardest. Because sometimes there comes a point where there are no easy choices left. Some owners make the decision to let their dog go peacefully. And despite how it feels, that decision is not cruel. It's often the kindest one. Medically, it's quiet and controlled. A single dose doesn't create fear. It simply turns off consciousness. Within seconds, the brain activity fades, and they slip into a state they don't come back from. There is no confusion in that moment, no awareness of what's happening. To them, the concept itself doesn't exist. But here's what does, what stays. Research using fMRI by Gregory Burns at Emory University showed that a dog's brain responds most strongly not to food or other animals, but to the scent of their owner. You, your presence, your voice, your hand. Those are the signals their brain connects to safety and comfort. Which means in those final moments, if you are there, they aren't focused on the end. They're focused on you. The last thing they feel isn't fear, it's familiarity. And then, for you, something else begins. Grief. And science is very clear about this. The brain doesn't treat that loss as something small. It reacts in ways almost identical to losing a human loved one, because the bond was real. So when you step back and look at everything together, the picture becomes clearer in a way most people don't expect. A dog does not sit there fearing death. They don't imagine the future. They don't count the time they have left. What they carry instead is something far simpler and in many ways far more powerful, a memory of you Not just your face, but your presence, your voice, your rhythm, a neurological imprint stored in the part of their brain that recognizes safety, comfort, and reward. You are not just the person who cared for them. You are the experience their brain returns to again and again. And that isn't poetry. That's biology. Every walk, every quiet moment, every time you said their name, it all built a life that, from their perspective, was full. So if you are in that moment right now, just be there. That alone is enough. And if that moment has already passed and the weight of it is still with you, understand what it really means. That pain you feel isn't weakness. It's the exact cost of having been everything to someone who saw you as their entire world.